Welcome, listener. Today we're diving deep into the world of plant mimicry, specifically Bocchila trifoliolata. It's a Chilean vine. And get this, it can change the shape and color, even the texture of its leaves, to match the plants around it. We've got some amazing research and articles, and honestly, this is going to challenge everything you think you know about plants.
Oh, absolutely. Bocchila is really turning things upside down in botany. It's making us rethink what plants are capable of, maybe even how they see the world.
Right. So first off, what exactly is Bocchila trifoliolata?
Well, it's kind of an unassuming vine, with these simple three-lobed leaves. But the real showstopper is the mimicry.
Yeah, picture this. You're walking through the Chilean rainforest.
And you see this vine morphing its leaves,
Yeah.
perfectly matching dozens of different plants around it. It's wild.
It's like a plant chameleon. And hold on, it gets even weirder. It can even mimic plants with thorns, like down to the sharp tips. How does it even do that?
That's the big question, right? And scientists are still trying to figure it out. The biggest mystery is, how does Bocchila see the plants it's mimicking? I mean, we know plants respond to light, but could they have something more like, vision?
I never really thought about plant vision before, but now I'm thinking about everything differently.
It's fascinating stuff. Scientists are finding evidence that plants might sense light in ways that are way more complex than we thought.
There's this research on daughter vines, those parasitic plants? Well, apparently they can actually sense the size and shape of their host plants before they latch on, like they're choosing their target.
It's incredible, right? And there's this one botanist, František Beluca, he even suggests that plants might have simple eyes on their leaves, like ocelli. The idea is that way back, an ancient ancestor of plants actually had a camera-like eye, and maybe, just maybe, some plants never completely lost that ability.
Plants with eyes, that's mind-blowing. But okay, if Bocchila is seeing these plants to mimic them, how does it know to copy a thorn on the underside of a leaf? That would take some serious depth perception, wouldn't it?
That's the puzzle. And it leads us to the two main theories that are trying to explain Bocchila's mimicry. One's this whole idea of plant vision. The other focuses on the role of microbes, specifically bacteria.
Okay, so two possible explanations. Plant vision, which sounds a little sci-fi, and bacteria, which are, everywhere. Let's break them down.
All right, let's start with plant vision. This theory basically suggests that Bocchila might be using some kind of visual perception to gather information about the shapes and textures of the plants around it.
But how could a plant see in a way that lets it, mimic something as complex as another plant?
Well, researchers point to these things called photoreceptors, which are basically cells that let plants detect light. And they found that some plants, like that daughter vine we talked about, they can use these photoreceptors to sense more than just where the light is coming from. They can actually perceive the shapes and sizes of other plants.
So plants might be more visually aware of their surroundings than we realize.
It's amazing, isn't it? And remember that experiment where they grew a Bocchila vine on a plastic tree? Well, it actually started to mimic the plastic tree, even though there was no way for genes or chemicals to be transferred between them.
That's a good point. If it wasn't chemicals or genes, what else could it be?
It's pretty intriguing evidence, for sure. But there's another piece to this puzzle. It's the microbial influence theory, championed by Ernesto Giannoli, the botanist who first discovered Bocchila's mimicry.
Okay, let's dive into that. Why does Giannoli think microbes are involved?
So, Giannoli and his team have spent years observing Bocchila in the Chilean rainforest. And they noticed that the mimicry isn't always perfect. Sometimes it's really strong, sometimes it's patchy, and sometimes it's even absent.
So the inconsistency made him think there was something else at play, something outside of the plant itself.
Exactly. And that's what led him to microbes. Think about it. Plants are covered in bacteria and fungi, just like we are. And we're learning more and more about how these microbes can actually influence how plants grow and behave.
Interesting. So how would these microbes be influencing Bocchila's mimicry?
Well, Giannoli's team analyzed the bacterial communities of Bocchila leaves. And get this, the bacteria on mimicking Bocchila leaves were similar to the bacteria on the plants they were mimicking. It's almost like the microbes were carrying information about the host plant's appearance and transferring it to Bocchila.
Hold on. Are you saying microbes could be acting like messengers, carrying blueprints for leaf shapes between plants? That's wild.
It does sound a bit sci-fi, right? But remember, we're constantly discovering new ways that microbes influence life. Think about our own gut bacteria. They affect our digestion, our immune system, even our mood.
You're right, we're walking ecosystems. And this idea that microbes could be shaping how plants look is, well, mind-blowing. So we have these two competing theories. Plant vision, which suggests some kind of visual perception, and microbial influence, where bacteria are like these messengers. Which one is more likely?
Well, the evidence is still building, and it's possible both theories could be at play. Maybe Bokila is using a combination of visual cues and microbial interactions to achieve this incredible mimicry.
It's like Bokila is leading us down this rabbit hole, making us rethink how we understand plants and what they can do. This is already so much more complex and interesting than I ever imagined.
Oh, I know, right? And to really understand how powerful Bokila's mimicry is, we need to talk about another type of mimicry, one that involves us, humans, and might just change how you think about plant domestication.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more. What other kind of mimicry is there?
It's called Vavilovian mimicry. It's named after Nikolai Vavilov, a Russian botanist who discovered it in the early 1900s. He was studying rye, and he noticed something really peculiar. You see, rye, which we eat today as a grain, actually started out as a weed.
Really? So how did it go from being a pesky weed to a food staple?
Well, Vavilov found that over time, rye evolved to look more and more like wheat. Think about it. Farmers were trying to weed out the rye, but the rye that looked most like wheat got to stay. It basically snuck into the fields by mimicking the good plants.
Wow, that's pretty sneaky. So plants can be deceptive too.
Absolutely. And Vavilovian mimicry isn't unique to rye either. Vavilov found similar mimicry in other plants. Oats mimicking wheat, barnyard grass mimicking rice, even common vetch mimicking lentils.
So it wasn't just humans shaping plants. Plants were shaping human behavior too, sneaking onto our plates and into our diets. This really challenges how we think about domestication, doesn't it?
It really does. Vavilovian mimicry suggests that plants have been way more active in their own domestication than we ever realized. And this brings us back to Bokila.
It's fascinating how these seemingly simple plants keep throwing our assumptions out the window. First, we learn they might have vision, then they're influencing our behavior, and now there's this incredible mimicry that might involve microbes. What other surprises are hiding in the plant kingdom?
That's the beauty of science, right? There's always more to discover. And Bokila is just the tip of the iceberg. We're going to delve deeper into what these discoveries mean, explore this whole idea of microbial clouds, and what it means for how we understand life itself.
Okay, I'm ready to go deeper. This is already mind-blowing.
Yeah.
All right, so we've been talking about Bokila's mind-blowing mimicry and how it might be influenced by vision or even microbes. You mentioned this idea of microbial clouds, which sounds kind of like something out of Star Wars. Can you break that down for me? What exactly are microbial clouds, and what do they have to do with plants?
Well, it might sound like science fiction, but it's actually science fact. We're all surrounded by this cloud of microscopic organisms. We're constantly shedding microbes, picking up new ones as we move through the world.
So it's like we're all walking around in these microbial bubbles, bumping into each other's invisible entourages. That handshake just got a whole lot more complicated.
Exactly. And it's not just humans. Every living thing, from plants to animals, has its own unique microbial cloud. And these clouds, they're dynamic, constantly changing and interacting with each other.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connection to Bokila. If plants have these microbial clouds, could they be exchanging microbes with each other? Could that explain how Bokila gets the blueprints for mimicking other plants?
That's one of the big questions driving Ginoli's research. Remember, he found that Bokila leaves had similar bacteria to the plants they were mimicking. So yeah, it's possible those microbes are carrying genetic information that influences the plant's shape and texture.
So the microbes could be like messengers delivering instructions for leaf design from one plant to another. It's almost like plants are communicating through these microbial whispers.
It's a fascinating concept, isn't it? It really challenges how we think about what makes up an individual organism. I mean, if we're all constantly exchanging microbes, where do the boundaries between species really lie?
This is making me think about that example you gave earlier, termites digesting wood thanks to the microbes in their guts. It's like the termite isn't really eating the wood, it's the microbes doing the work.
That's a great analogy. It really illustrates this concept of a holobiont. It's a composite organism made up of many different organisms working together.
So is Bokila a holobiont then? Is its mimicry a result of its own genes plus the microbes it's interacting with?
That's a very good question. And it really shows how blurred the lines can get when we consider microbes. We're learning that we're all holobionts, not just termites. Our own bodies are full of microbes that affect everything. Our digestion, our mood even.
It's like we're only just starting to understand how life really works. You know, that quote from Giannoli really sticks with me. What you thought was managed by the organism, well, it seems at least half of it was done by some bacterium. It makes you wonder, what other hidden collaborations are happening in nature?
It really is a big shift in how we see things. Instead of thinking of ourselves as these isolated individuals, we need to start thinking about ourselves as interconnected communities, deeply intertwined with the microbial world.
Okay, so microbes are everywhere, and they're influencing life in ways we're just beginning to understand. But how does this all connect back to Bokeela's mimicry?
Well, one possibility is that the microbes Bokeela picks up from its neighbors, they might contain microRNAs. These are tiny pieces of genetic material. And these microRNAs can actually influence how genes are expressed in plants, affecting their development and appearance.
So it's like the microbes are carrying tiny instruction manuals for building leaves, and they can transfer these instructions from one plant to another.
That's a simplified way of putting it, but yeah, essentially. And what's even more amazing is that bacteria can just swap genes freely with each other, regardless of species. Imagine if larger organisms could do that, picking up genes from other species just by coming into contact with them.
That would be crazy. It would totally change how evolution works. But you know, this whole microbial influence thing, it makes me wonder if microbes can influence the shape and behavior of plants. Could they be influencing us in ways we don't even realize?
It's definitely a possibility, and it shows how interconnected we are with the microbial world. We can't separate ourselves from these tiny organisms. They're part of what makes us, us.
It really makes you think about individuality, doesn't it? Like, what if our cravings for certain foods are influenced by the microbes those plants are carrying? That's a trippy thought.
It is, and it's just one of the many possibilities that arise when we consider the full impact of microbial life.
Okay, I'm definitely going to be looking at my salad a little differently now. But before we get too lost in this world of microbial mind control, let's bring it back to Bokeela. We've talked about vision in microbes. Are there any other theories out there trying to explain this mimicry?
Well, those are the two main contenders, and both of them have pretty compelling evidence, but honestly, we're still not 100% sure on the exact mechanisms behind Bokeela's incredible transformations.
It's like Bokeela saying, hey, humans, you think you know how nature works? Think again.
You got it. This is a plant that's pushing the boundaries of what we know scientifically, and it reminds us that nature is full of mysteries waiting to be uncovered.
Speaking of mysteries, there was that story you mentioned earlier about the Lardizabala vine, whose fruits supposedly take on the medicinal properties of the trees it climbs. Has Giannoli looked into that at all?
He has, but so far there's no scientific confirmation. But it's a fascinating example of how traditional knowledge can often point us toward really interesting research. Who knows, maybe one day we'll discover that plants can share not just their appearance, but also their chemical properties through microbial exchange.
That would be incredible. It seems like every time we think we have things figured out, nature throws us a curveball.
Exactly. And that's what makes science so exciting. There's always something new to learn, another layer to peel back. And in the case of Bokeela, this little vine from the Chilean rainforest, it's leading us on a journey that's changing how we understand life itself.
This whole deep dive has been a wild ride. I'm starting to see the world through a completely different lens. One where plants are way more complex and dynamic than I ever imagined.
That's the power of Bokeela, right? It makes us rethink our place in the natural world. It makes us see ourselves not as separate from nature, but as part of this vast interconnected web of life.
Well said. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what's the main thing you want our listeners to take away? What's the big aha moment?
I think the big takeaway is that nature is full of wonder. And we're only just scratching the surface of understanding how complex life really is on Earth. Bokeela's mimicry shows us just how powerful adaptation is, how interconnected all living things are, and all the mysteries that are still out there, hidden within the plant kingdom.
Exactly. So stay curious, keep exploring, and never stop asking questions. Who knows what other amazing discoveries are waiting to be made, just like Bokeela was patiently waiting in that Chilean rainforest, ready to change how we see plants and their place in the world.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the mysteries of Bokeela trifoliolata. We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? From the Chilean rainforest to mind-boggling scientific theories, we even bumped into these invisible microbial clouds. Yeah, it's been quite a journey. Now, as we wrap up this final part of our deep dive, I think it's a good time to step back and think about what we can learn from Bokeela's story.
Yeah.
About life itself. What does this all mean for us and our relationship with nature?
Totally. This whole exploration has honestly left me feeling kind of awestruck. Like we just peeked into this hidden world, you know? Who knew plants could be so complex, so dynamic?
Right. Bokila is like this botanical puzzle, making us rethink those boundaries between species,
Yeah.
the role of those microbes, even what we consider intelligence. It shows us nature's full of surprises, and we're still just scratching the surface.
It really makes you rethink that whole idea of survival of the fittest, doesn't it? Maybe it's not all about competition. Maybe it's more about cooperation, adapting, finding creative ways to make it in this ever-changing world.
I think you're really onto something there. Bokila's mimicry shows us just how adaptable life can be, how resilient. This little vine, it found a way to take advantage of other plants' strengths, almost like it's tapping into this shared library of, like, evolutionary knowledge.
It's like Bukila is this master innovator, always borrowing, adapting, taking successful strategies from its neighbors. That's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It really is, and it shows us just how important biodiversity is. Every species, even the ones that seem insignificant, they all have this crucial role in that intricate web of life. When we mess with that web, whether it's habitat loss or climate change, we're unraveling this delicate balance, the one that keeps us all going.
It's a little sobering, but also a call to action, you know? We need to protect the incredible diversity of life on this planet, not just for other species, but for ourselves, too.
Absolutely. Bokila's story is a reminder we're not separate from nature, we're a part of it. As we explore the natural world, we need to do it with respect, with humility, and this deep appreciation for how everything is connected.
I couldn't agree more. It's like Bokila is telling us, hey, humans, we're in this together. Let's learn from each other and find ways to thrive.
Exactly. And that's a powerful message to take with us as we move forward.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into Bokila, what's the one thing you'd want our listeners to walk away with? What's that aha moment?
The big takeaway for me is that the natural world is way more complex than we often realize. It's interconnected, intelligent even. Bokila's mimicry really challenges how we think. It expands our understanding, and it makes us want to look deeper, to ask more questions, to approach nature with wonder and curiosity.
That's a beautiful way to put it. We need to stay curious, keep exploring, and never stop questioning. Because who knows what other incredible discoveries are out there, just waiting to be found. Just like Bokila was waiting in that Chilean rainforest, ready to change how we understand plants and their place in the world. And on that note, listeners, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the mysterious world of Bokila trifoliolata. We hope you've enjoyed the ride. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and never stop being